Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. I'm Anna Castle, Director of Marketing here at Advisicon, and I'm really glad you're able to make it to join today. For those of you who aren't familiar with Advisicon, let me just tell you a bit more about us. Our mission's clear. We want to boost your project management efficiencies by optimizing your processes and technologies, creating measurable results that are going to empower both you and your organization. We have over 20 years in the project management industry and are a gold level project partner with Microsoft. So no matter what your company's size, our team specializes in maximizing your business and personal productivity through leveraging the Microsoft technology experience. About our session today, this is part of our weekly webinar series. If you're new with us, I really encourage for you to check out our upcoming topics. Those are available by reaching out through our website or directly email us at contact@advisicon.com. We'll send you our upcoming topics. This program is actually made for and by you. As a result of your feedback, we construct new topics each week that hopefully really apply practical insight, skills, and strategy to your everyday environment. Also, each session includes a PDU. This is a 1-hour session, and it also qualifies for one free PDU. I'll tell you more about that at the close of our time together. And at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Tim Runcie, Advisicon founder and president and Microsoft MVP. Take it away, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Anna. Welcome, everyone, to our webinar series. Today's topic is on positive project leadership, and certainly an engaging topic, which we'll talk a lot more about. Let me turn on my video so people can actually see me for those who are in the live session, and we can kind of go through the components and certainly get to have a little bit more of a personal experience for today. What's been fun in this industry of not only doing technology and methodology, writing books, in fact, I think we were trying to tally how many books that we've written over the years, and it's well over 36 that are published in training classes. But one of the things that comes up very commonly is the theme of change, the theme of how do you create a culture of project management. And so back in the late 1990s, I kind of began the process of defining that term. In fact, we actually have it on our website, which was helping you build a project management culture. And I get very excited about not just technology because of what you can do with the technology, but really transforming organizations into things that have self-sustaining operational functionality for both change, tools, process, and technology. And positive project leadership is one of those that we really drill into, that it becomes a core foundation of a very healthy way to grow and change the way that you run projects, the way that you manage your programs and portfolios, as well as how you create a leadership and a culture that's all around solution-focused deliverables. So there's a quote on the screen right now, and this is kind of fun here. It says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather the wood, divide the work, give orders. If this was a project server engagement, we'd be saying, and build a project schedule and map out your issues and risks. The idea, very simply, is instead teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Now think about that for a moment. The idea is if you want to build a ship, don't get people to go out and just tell them what to do and do the work, but help teach others to really get the value of what you're trying to do. So in a sense, we think about positive project leadership. We talk about what the impact is to the organization and also to you personally. And it's exciting to understand that as you begin looking at implementing, whether it's tactical positive project leadership or what I refer to as PPL, whether it's collaborative teamwork, maybe it's a couple developers or technical resources or business analysts working together, or project managers are kind of solving things together, or you're within a PMO, or you're a senior executive in a corporation, is that the PPL impacts the entire organization from top to bottom. And what you're going to find is that there's synergy that builds upon itself as you begin to use this. And it's actually very exciting to watch little sparks begin to happen in this area, and then suddenly it catches fire and goes. What's scary about positive project leadership is that it's also fairly delicate. in a sense is that you can squelch positive leadership in an organization quickly and efficiently without doing anywhere near the effort that you used to create it. So let's talk about our goals today. I want to make sure you understand what is positive project leadership. Definitely grasp what it can do for you, really understanding not only what are the benefits, but also the detriments of not leveraging that. And then how do you tactically or strategically apply the communication or all aspects around positive project leadership. And again, this conversation today is not just for PMO managers or senior VPs or CTOs or CIOs or CXOs. It really can happen to you at home. It can happen to you personally. It has so many layers that you can use, and that's pretty exciting. So first of all, give everyone a warning. This is not easy to do. In fact, in my organizational history, not only internally at AdvisorCon, but working for customers, is as we would work to stand up a project management office or help them deploy a technology. The idea is that this is something you absolutely should try, but it's not something that happens overnight. It really requires some change, some thought, and then just some elbow grease to continue to what I call start the fire and fan the flames. So again, it may take some time to implement, but the benefits you can start reaping from this can happen almost instantly. And again, I'm not the inventor of positive project management or positive project leadership. In many cases, this topic is something that we've gleaned and gathered from reading books, implementing best practices, watching worst practices happen in organizations. So excited today to kind of summarize some of this for you in our webinar. On the screen right now, I've got some of the books that I think really reinforce key elements in PPL. So we talk about, how full is your bucket, and appreciative inquiry, or even positive leadership by Mike McGee. Another great book is something called Ascent of a Leader, which really talks about the growth of leadership in an organization, not only with a single person, but changing and transforming that organization and approaches to that. And all of these kind of lead back into what is leadership and what are you doing in terms of making that happen. So leadership is something that you don't necessarily get with a title. It's not something that suddenly you responded to a help wanted ad or you went in through Craigslist and suddenly you've got a job and poof, you're a leader. Leadership is a journey. And it doesn't matter where you are in an organization, agency, home, personal, nonprofit organization, is that you can be applying leadership at any point in time, whether you have no one following you or you just work collectively as a team. But again, it is a journey. And so the term I'm going to start off with is something called Kaizen. And for those of people who work in the Lean or Six Sigma industry, we understand about this whole concept of continuous process improvement. And so positive project leadership is not something that you take a class, you insert your credit card, and poof, you deploy a software package, and poof, there it is. Positive project leadership is there and running. It's something that is a core change in not only a culture, but at a personal level. And so the idea of whether you're doing quality management or risk management, that there's a continuous learning and improvement cycle. So one of the things that we find very clearly is that the mindset of I have arrived is the antithesis of successfully implementing positive project leadership. The idea is that you're in a constant learning mode, and whether you are the top of the food chain, CEO or president, or you're the first person starting out at the bottom in a technical team, is that this leadership concept applies to you no matter where you're at, and that you're in a learning process both up and down, because knowledge doesn't just come from the top down. In many cases, we glean and learn from the bottom up. Especially if you think about this, is that it not only applies to you in business, but it also applies in your home life. And it really focuses on changing character qualities that will reap rewards, certainly in a business mindset or in a business situation, but also personally. So let's talk a little bit around what is not the goal of positive project leadership. And if we think in terms of, in many cases, defining what something is, sometimes it's important to also define what it is not. And what I like to do is kind of point out areas or pitfalls that say these are clear detriments to encouraging and fostering positive leadership. So again, if we talk about making that happen, let's just get into some of the details here. So what the goal is definitely not. It should not be a vehicle to get what you want done. Again, I refer to the term manipulation, is that in many cases, you bribe, you beg, borrow, and steal to accomplish things. And while those might be creative, this is not a vehicle to just get what you want. That's the wrong mindset. Again, there's a different approach to that. And again, thinking back, again, it's not just for you going, all right, I want to move to the next tier in our organization. I'm really climbing the ladder. Or retroactively, you're not sitting back and being what we call an armchair quarterback saying, well, gee, I could have done that better, and this is what I should have done. There's a different shift in terms of how that happens. Your position, your promotion, your movement through the ranks in an organization or within a family or in a nonprofit organization is really about something that you're contributing. And again, as we look at increasing what we call trust and influence, influence is not based upon a title. In fact, as a trainer and an educator, I have learned more from my students than I have from just certainly reading books. And while I might be able to go out and digest process and approaches, it's the application of that. And so my title does not necessarily grant me influence. It might help, but influence can happen whether you're at the top or the bottom. So your position, again, does not basically equate to automatic influence. And that's the exciting part about positive project leadership, or PPL, is that you can be applying this today and influence, creating trust, and actually building this as you move forward. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about the goal. And I have a little picture here for everyone, and if you look at this kind of picture showcasing a human pyramid, if I was to step in and say, you know, which person in this chain is the most important, or which one has the most responsibility? And if you look at it, is it the person at the top, you know, with their arms outstretched saying, ta-da, I've arrived, I changed, I've done this, we've accomplished this value or this mission? Or is it the person at the very, very, very bottom who's supporting the weight of all of the work or initiative or activities? And so the idea of the goal of PPL is that it is a team effort. And we're going to talk about that in creating these environments. But this pyramid chain isn't just the people that are in the chain. It could be people planning or creating the pyramid, and not just the person at the top, but also people at the bottom. So if we think about the goal, the idea is to create an environment of we, not me. Now let me say that again. To create an environment of we, not me. In small organizations, you have what we call niche players. You have senior resources, or you have really powerful resources that are very good at doing something. And a lot of times they surround them with a support team that helps accomplish something. But the idea is that success or delivery of a product, or a success and delivery of a program, or any deliverable is really the focus not being just a single person, but it is the collective organization together. The idea of the positive project leadership is to instill vision and creativity within your team, from top to bottom and bottom to top, and that everyone is focused on working towards a solution, whatever their role may be. Again, we succeed as a team. We also might fail as a team. And that's important to understand, that in positive project leadership is that we're not just trying to get something done. It's more about that journey, that leadership growth, and not just simply delivering a single project or a program or a successful technology implementation or a construction project or a healthcare revision or change. What we really are wanting to do is create a culture of something that's going to be reusable. And again, in that whole process, that many hands will make light work, is that working together we succeed. So thinking a little bit about the benefits, let's just talk about the benefits of PPL. The idea is that if you begin to implement the things that I'm going to be talking about today, is that you begin to build what are called result-driven teams. The idea simply is that organizations and teams are a collective. They're made up of different individuals. And as they begin to coalesce and begin to work in a positive, focused approach, solution-minded environment, instilling trust and building up influence, the idea is that there's an automatic improvement in productivity. So you're going to find your resources from a project perspective are more flexible, they're more adaptive. And as you know, certainly as market conditions change, the price of steel goes up or goes down, the oil or gas prices might be in different places, and suddenly there's an impact to your ecosystem. Your organization is able to survive and adapt to some of those and are a lot more reflexive in terms of looking at that. In building PPL, you're also going to find that you're starting to create a leadership pool. And this is one of the exciting things about this, is that it's great to have an organization with drivers, right? People who drive. But you certainly need people who can help you execute. And a balance between helping somebody who might be starting out in an execution role grow into a leadership role is part of what we refer to as succession planning. And so with PPL, you're going to find that you're going to begin to develop naturally, natively, a better leadership pool. People begin to understand how to communicate and create accountability. And again, not only just getting the immediate benefits of improved project performance, but you're able to have rapid organizational change. And what that means is that while change in human beings, or what we refer to as human systems, sometimes takes time, what you also find is that as you begin to implement this, is that you're going to find a more rapid succession in accomplishing organizational growth and changes. And again, there is a huge level of personal satisfaction just being involved in this process. I think it'll make a lot more sense as I start breaking out the details. So let's take a look at what does PPL look like. What are the elements that make this successful? So one of the things that we refer to is that it's not just about how you run your project. We talk about creating something called a fear-free environment. And I'm going to talk about something called an environment of grace here fairly shortly, but the idea is that the environment is basically referring to as fear-free. It's that people are not afraid to actually engage in popping up ideas or solutions. It doesn't mean that people don't lose their jobs and hard things happen and you don't wrestle with problems. But the idea is how you approach that is almost as much as important as what the solution is that you came up with. Again, there's also a building of trust. One of the things that we find in many organizations is that sometimes you have micromanagers. And micromanagers, in many cases, have not been able to develop a level of trust, meaning that they may not trust people to say, here's what we're going to do. Again, we want to talk about creating a trust relationship environment. And again, having a mindset of focusing on solutions, not blame. Some of you probably have been in project retroactives or lesson learned sessions, and you remember these sessions as not being a retrospective or a reflection or perhaps even lessons learned, is it really turned into something as we refer to maybe blame storming. And so the idea is that that is a complete disconnect from what we're trying to accomplish. Again, you're encouraging the ability for people to have freedom to invite and to receive each other's positive influence or input. Now, you have to be careful with that, and I'll talk about that more in detail, but the idea is that no matter where you are in an organization, whether you're the top or the bottom, is that there's an opportunity to invite and receive input to help make things better. So the term I mentioned before was something called an environment of grace. And a lot of people don't understand or maybe haven't heard that phraseology before, but this has a lot of special meaning to me, and so let me talk about what does grace mean. So on my screen here I've got a little picture of my daughter. She's 2. The youngest daughter is about ready to go out into her first snow outside of being an infant, and well, depending on which side of the North American landmass you are in the winter, some of you guys are getting deluged in snow. Other people are getting light dusting, but she's turning back and saying, you want me to do what? I'm not quite sure about this. And as she began to think around, hey, what are we trying to accomplish and do, my daughter, Rachel, quickly found that snow is a lot of fun. And so she would say to me, Daddy, this is delicious. Do you want some? And so if we think about grace and just the terminology of grace itself, in my history, my great-grandmother was named Grace. Grace Wieslander, and she was a just amazing woman. And the memories I have of her were nothing but apple marmalade, just amazing, fruit and flavorful dishes, but just the warmth and love and caring and compassion coming from her exuded in everything that we did, even if we were working on projects or not. And so her name was Grace, which translated into her daughter, which was my grandmother, named Grace Runcie. And again, now my daughter, Rachel Grace. And I think about in my life when I had my 2-year-old, which is Rachel now, is that wasn't quite sure if I was going to have another child. And so grace is a gift that we typically don't deserve. And the idea is that in an environment of grace is that in many cases, yeah, you should probably be bonked on the head for something. But instead, how we approach that may not be exactly how we deserve that. So while grace is a gift that we don't deserve, or it's a simple elegance, meaning that we grace our presence with someone, or we approach things with grace, it really has an environment that is much more structured around providing a warm and a healthy environment. And so for me personally, this has had a lot of impact, and so I talk about what's called an environment of grace. And if I want to show you a little bit of the steps that go into the anatomy of project leadership. So positive project leadership, looking at this environment of grace, has a couple dimensions. I want you to look at the horizontal axis, which says as you begin to climb this staircase of leadership, the idea is that you're increasing your influence at the same time as that you're building and growing trust. And this environment of grace, there is something that we want to watch happen. And if you look in the center, I have a little phraseology here that I talk about, which is interesting as new people come on board into organizations. Sometimes you know people who come in and they have a sense of entitlement. And so the idea is that appreciation is going to completely end where entitlement begins, or inherently, entitlement begins when people stop appreciating their teams, their resources, and the opportunity that they have. So this environment of grace, if we begin to scale the structure of what we want to do in terms of growing this anatomy of leadership, is that at the very bottom, we start with that mindset. This is a we, not a me. Now at AdvisorCon, I certainly have said this many times, is that it can't be an organization built around just a single couple of really senior smart people. It has to be something that is self-sustaining, that there's an investment in doing that. Now if I point to the next step on the ladder here, we talk about servanthood. And I'm going to spend some time just kind of addressing this because that is not typically what leaders think of themselves as being a leader. But the term servant leadership really is an approach to some of the best philosophers in the industry today talk about how they approach things and really working to serve as a leader to empower your teams, make them successful. In a sense, whether you are a CXO or you're the person at the bottom, is that we are engaging to solve and produce and validate a solution. And as we move through that process, we want to validate the people who are delivering success. Or as you begin thinking through the environment of generating ideas to be positively working to a focused approach, is that we want to validate the people that are doing the work. We want to give credit where credit is due. We also want to ensure that that vision or communication is also shared. And this is an important element. If you think about vision from a leadership down, is that if we set the vision, this is where we want to go. There may be lots of different approaches or solutions that would deliver that vision. And what you want to do is begin to encourage and foster people to say, I got the vision. I want to go out onto the endless and vast sea. Therefore, we need a boat. The intent may be from an executive is that, yep, I need a boat to go sail the endless and vast sea, but if you can instill the value of that vision, you suddenly have people who are not understanding just the what they need to do, but why that's important, and empowering them to begin to be part of the solution, not just taking orders from the top. Now again, we talk about vision and validation and certainly support and the we-minded approach. That doesn't mean that you're not transparent, meaning that we definitely don't have visibility of what's going on. In fact, in many cases, senior management struggles with transparency, or at least the ability to understand what's coming. Some people keep it very close to their chest, saying, oh my gosh, this is horrible, I don't want to say anything because I might get fired, or does anybody know this is going completely off the rails? Or goodness gracious, the emperor has no clothes on. At some point, somebody needs to talk about that. So this is an environment of grace. It's important to be able to instill the ability to have transparency, the ability to collaborate, communicate, talk about things, and certainly, involve people means that there's a level of trust that needs to increase. Again, looking at that horizontal axis of influence growing as we build the trust, meaning going on our vertical axis, we start leveraging the ability to say, I have visibility, accountability, I have people that are validated, and they certainly are being supported, but there also is accountability. It doesn't just mean carte blanche, I'm going to trust you, go do what you need to do. Is that we want to create the ability that says, hey, I can communicate, this is what we need to do, this is how we want to measure that. Sometimes I refer to the trust but verify. And as long as that's transparent and out there, people clearly understand what's happening. Again, that mindset of we, not me is helpful, but you have to be thinking about what's called teachability. If everyone engaged in positive project leadership from either top to bottom is in that constant Kaizen, that continuous process improvement, that learning mode, then you're going to find that as you grow, or maybe perhaps you're siloed, that the communication is going to bring ideas. And if you keep that open mindset, at the top, we've established a high level of integrity. I'm accountable, I'm transparent, I've laid down the vision of what we need to do, I'm supporting myself and my team, and I have the integrity and trust from my people who work for me or work with me alongside to deliver value. Again, some of that anatomy is extremely important. I'm going to pick a few pieces here and I'm going to drill into more details around that. Now, something that comes up when we talk about the anatomy of leadership is, where is communication? Where does that roll into? And if we think about communication, it is all the way from the top to the bottom. And so whether it's creating tracking mechanisms, reporting mechanisms, or at least the ability to invite or communicate what is going on, there's a lot of tools, technologies, and processes that reinforce that. But I want to just simply say that this is a strong communication trait, and there's a lot of great books out there that'll talk about ways to communicate effectively, and certainly to encourage that. But again, communication, strong trait in terms of how you put that together in building this environment of grace in the road to positive project leadership. Now, one more quote, and I think this is kind of helpful before I talk about some of the scary stuff, which is statistics that are absolutely detrimental to positive project leadership, is that, first of all, the responsibility of a leader is to define reality. Again, we talk about that transparency, accountability, and vision. And again, Max Dupree, who wrote in Leadership as an Art, came up with this quote and says, the last is to say thank you. So first, if you're setting the vision, second, you're giving the validation to those who actually help produce and deliver that, and in between, the leader is a servant, meaning that you're in a supportive role. These are some very powerful components to help build and propel an organization, a team, or a project, or a PMO, or whatever the group is that's solving a problem that have been gathered together to think about creating a solution-minded, positive project leadership role, and to help you grow in this scale in your environment doing leadership. So let's talk about some scary statistics. And I think this is, if you kind of reflect on this in your past, you may have some of your own stats. But in the book that was surveyed and written by Beverly Kay and Jordan Evans in the book called Love 'Em or Lose 'Em, Getting Good People to Stay, they were focused around how to encourage people or resources to certainly stay in an organization. If you think about positive project leadership, or PPL, inherently, as you create an environment that is solution-minded and it's positive, is that you really are trying to instill good values in delivering something, or delivering an initiative or a project, but there are things that you're going to find that actually detract from that. So let's look at some of the stats here. First of all, in their study, they said, hey, 41% found that their boss belittles people in front of others. Wow. Wow, that is just awful, right? If your boss belittled you in front of others, imagine what that does for that positive leadership or instilling trust. Again, 34%, their boss said that their bosses lie. So if we're talking about lying, where does trust come into play, or where do we have accountability? 32% said their boss condescends or demeans them. And again, 24% says their boss humiliates and embarrasses others. And again, down at the bottom here, 22% said their boss micromanages. All of these statistics paint a picture, which I'm sure maybe in your career you've experienced some, or if not all of these, and I'm sorry if you have, that absolutely are the antithesis, again, of helping to create that environment of grace. So if we think about what is the antithesis of PPL leadership, let's take a look at a couple elements that, if we were going through the same stair step of leadership growth, is that if we talk about the axis of fear and the growth of mistrust in an organization, in an environment of grace, the entire environment of negativity would be the antithesis here. So first off, we look at, instead of an I versus me, we talk about I-centric. Moving into a position where we refer to dictatorial delegation, where simply being told what to do is not fostering that collaborative approach. Instead of validation, we find disconfirmation. Again, thinking in terms of that value, or setting the vision where people are actually being micromanaged. Again, actually moving polar opposites from creating that PPL environment. Criticism, and certainly being untouchable, or listen, there is no way that we can actually provide input or value or communication, or all of that. And on top of that, not having that mindset of being teachable is the opposite, of course, is unteachable. And by the time you get there, we actually have a very immature process, a very immature project organization culture, and an immature leadership environment with which to solve, tackle, and manage projects, programs, or portfolios. So again, we think about what are the key ingredients that we actually want to drill into and make actionable that will help you leverage PPL. Well, first of all, we all know that one of the key ingredients is that you need to deploy good software and technology, right? I'm being a little facetious here, but while communication and technology might help you in terms of software collaborate and connect, it is absolutely not one of the core elements there. It might be a tool to help you get down the process, manage accountability, streamline your communications, but again, not part we're after. This is something more about a leadership in building integrity that will happen with you, whether it's at home or at work, is that we really start thinking about me versus we, and we want to change that to me and we, right? It's not about me doing all the work. It's not about the hero complex. We really work together collaboratively. So I have a picture here of our Advisacon team, and I'm sure you can probably pick me out from the bunch. Certainly I won't tell you which one I am, but if it's all a bunch of clowns, and that's our goal, is to accomplish clowning around, then let's do it together. Again, a me and a we approach, really focusing on the outcomes or the strategic objectives. So the benefits of taking this approach with the me and we and creating this environment are absolutely amazing. In fact, I get excited around this because if you start implementing any of these tactical steps I'm going to show you, you're going to find these benefits. So let's think about that for a moment. I'm sure you've been in a position where you've actually experienced positive leadership. In fact, if you think back to people in your life, whether it was your 6th grade math teacher, or whether it was a project manager, or perhaps it was a leader that was one of your first jobs, or maybe it's in the executive team that you're working with now, or maybe even you're watching as an executive activities that are being delivered, and you can really kind of see good examples of good positive leadership being displayed. You can probably write down 1 or 2 instances, and I encourage you to kind of reflect on that. What is it that they are doing? What was it that that person did in your life that was actually positive? And if you go back and you look at the ingredients that are there, chances are they are a good combination of what we find in positive project leadership. Inversely, if you step back and think about negative experiences you had with leadership, think of people that just horrifically did not do a good job, or really in many cases burned as many bridges as possible, and you reflect on what they did and what it was, you're going to find very commonly it goes back to that antithesis of what we found from PPL. So if we think about organizational benefits, not just personal benefits, but if we start at a high level of implementing PPL, you're going to find that you're going to immediately begin to reflect upon the fact that you have better communication. Team members will start having better relationships. In fact, in many cases, you start to see a combination of clear communication, better communication, earlier communication, and a stronger set of team relationships in solving problems and getting things done. Another organizational byproduct of PPL is something that I get very happy about, is referring to what's called spontaneous self-corrected behavior. And what that means is that people will start to recognize when they're not doing what should be in a positive or healthy manner. And it doesn't just mean them, it also sometimes is the team. In fact, you know you're seeing success in PPL is that when the team actually starts to self-correct each other, saying, hey, you know, that wasn't very helpful. And they're not doing it publicly in front of everyone else, but really what they're trying to do is get people reoriented. In some cases refer to reorienting around the brand. How are we going to deliver this? How do we solve problems as a group or an organization? Again, we see increased integrity and character, meaning that people own their mistakes. They surface the problems early. They have integrity, saying, I'm going to do this, you can count on me to get this done, which of course not only increases trust, but also higher satisfaction rate for people who are implementing success, as well as retention for you and your organization of good key resources. You begin creating a culture of leadership, not just at the top level, but from the bottom up and top down, so that people understand these are good traits of what a good leader will be. And again, remember, the focus of positive project leadership is not just about making people feel good, because sometimes we wrestle with really hard decisions, discussions. Sometimes we have to chip away at things that are broken, that don't work. But the idea is that this is about results. It is results-oriented. At Advisacon, we love implementing technology because we can see metrics and helping organizations change, shape themselves, be able to weather better the initiatives, or weather better diversity that happens in organizations or companies. So when we think about organizational benefits, let's drill down into just leadership benefits of PPL. One of the things is that we look at leadership as a team, right? Not just an individual. A leadership team is always better than a leader all by themselves. There's a saying that says, one bad general is better than two good generals. And the idea is that if there is a miscommunication or two different good generals that have lots of ideas but they're not in collaboration, then in many cases a bad leader or a bad general is going to do a better job than even two good generals. In this case, if we start thinking about getting the team working together, a leadership team provides a much more broader set of skills, eyes, arms, legs, thinking and brain power to solving problems than just a single draconian approach to getting something done. Again, organizations need leaders at every level. It doesn't just mean the project manager, the program manager, the portfolio manager. It doesn't just the CXO or anybody at the executive level. In many cases, leadership starts right where you're at today. Even if you were the first-time janitor on a project and your job is to keep things cleaned up for the rest of the team, is the idea is how you approach things is important, and leaders are needed at every level in the organization. Leading today, meaning stepping in and doing this, leading now, qualifies you to lead later. And as you begin thinking about your growth in ascent of a leader, or basically kind of climbing that ladder of success in PPL in terms of effectiveness, is that you'd start now. And again, as you begin to improve your skills, you're going to refine that, and allows you to be able to move and provide better leadership later on. Again, good leaders in the middle make better leaders at the top. And so as you begin looking through junior leadership, this is one of the fastest ways to help propel people through an organization. Again, the mindset here isn't for you to climb a corporate ladder. It's really to have a core positional approach to how getting things done. And again, these are just byproducts of implementing positive project leadership. Okay, let's talk about relational values, because in many cases, sometimes it rolls back down to, what are you doing today? Maybe you're not in an organization. Maybe this is something that you do at home or with your family, or perhaps as a volunteer. But the idea is that people can be themselves, right? With positive project leadership, is they can be themselves. They bring in some of those quirks. They bring in some of those great, I'll call it creative ideas or processes or how they approach. And it doesn't mean that we're in lockstep, or it doesn't mean we don't follow a process. It just means that we're able to infuse the nature of who we are, and that dynamic nature begins to look at how they play their part in solving problems for an organization. Again, a relational benefit is that people feel validated and they feel valued and understood. And again, that's that communication level that says, I'm inviting people to certainly come in and have that conversation. Maybe I missed something. And so I validate my team, I make sure we understand. And again, in terms of creating a safe harbor for talking about problems, is that you begin to create this environment of grace where people can talk, solve problems, and work to a solution. The byproduct relationally, and not only just organizationally or departmentally or a project or even just for yourself, is that people become more creative, more adaptable, and more flexible. Now, my background comes certainly from IT and technical and healthcare, but before I did all of that, I was in construction, and being a CV for the Navy, we worked in many cases for a lot of different agencies, and in part of that delivery, there was a motto we came up called Semper Gumby. Now, the Marine Corps might call it Semper Fidelis, which is Latin for always faithful. We simply said Semper Gumby, and that was always flexible. Because in many cases, situations, culture, economics may change. And what we want to do is we want to understand that vision and provide creativity, adaptability, and certainly flexibility to solve that. So in terms of positive project leader, you begin fostering this at the outset of implementing that. And again, as you begin to start thinking about leadership, in many cases, you might be a great person. In fact, some of the things I like to do is scuba diving. And remember, with a scuba diver or someone who is snorkeling, you're underwater, and your vision is kind of confined to this mask. And so if you think about as a leader, in many cases, you can't see everything, you can't be everywhere, neither should you be trying to do that. If you're creating that culture where we really talk about successive collaboration, or we talk about successive leadership, meaning that we have the ability to begin to foster that, is that we get these extra set of eyes to show us things that we don't see. And I know all of you probably can think of areas in your life where you said, wow, I got completely blindsided. I said this, and that's clearly not what I was trying to say, and it came across completely wrong. Now, that's whether with you and your spouse, or certainly you at work, but in many cases, some people are completely oblivious. And as a leader, we certainly are looking for people to help us improve what we're understanding and what we're doing. With positive project leadership is that you begin to have eyes and ears in places that you didn't know. And so we're going to talk about some tactical approaches now of how to apply that. All right, one of those right out of the gate is to lead by example. If we think about Alexander the Great in terms of his leadership, taking over, and in fact, many cases, conquering most of the known world at that time, is that he led from the front. What inspires people is that you're leading from the front, helping to solve and work problems successfully. And while this picture on my screen doesn't necessarily show a leading from the front or a collaborative approach, the idea is with this environment of grace is that we begin to help people treat each other better than they'd be expected to be treated. People will make mistakes. Estimates will be inaccurate. Problems will come up. Things that we thought would work won't work. Market conditions will change, and it will create a lot of stress. And for those of you in the project management world or the program and portfolio industry, you understand the lifeblood of your nonprofit or your agency or organization is really tied to successful output. And there are repercussions for failing or making mistakes. But the idea is, how do we learn from those mistakes? Inherently with this environment of grace is that we're demonstrating unmerited concern and kindness, meaning that we really aren't just looking at focusing on deliverables, is that we are concerned genuinely about where people are at. As you know, sometimes you come to work and you've had a really rough night, right? Having a young child, you certainly, those of you that are parents might remember not getting any sleep for months on end, or you've only had a couple hours of sleep, or perhaps you've had a colleague who's died, or maybe that your family is in the hospital, and people are distracted. And so an environment of grace in many cases says, hey, listen, if I screw up or if I flub up or if I make a mistake, people do understand, or I understand that, hey, listen, maybe that's not exactly who you are. I'm not going to define you by that. And hopefully that behavior won't change, but the idea is that there's a sense of making sure that you've got that unmerited concern or grace that you're able to say, yeah, we'll work through that. Again, the other part of this is also giving without regard to getting back. Now, this is a core change, meaning that you are engaged to solve things as a team. And it's not about hogging glory or claiming glory or I need to significantly get all the accolades. In many cases with our consulting teams, we talk about this internally where it's amazing how much you can accomplish if you are willing to give up credit for getting it. Because a lot of people want to claim the glory, but yet it was a whole team of delivering it. So if you're able to say, look, give credit where credit is due, it's amazing how inspiring that is for people to say, listen, I'm actually getting recognized for what I'm doing. I want to do more of that. And again, this giving without regard helps you break down the silos, break down the barriers. This literally is a paradigm shift in how you're approaching solving things, not as a leader, not just as a leader at a local level, but certainly at any part or even globally in terms of this environment. Again, we're trying to create influence. As we begin to think through that influence through trust, is that we want to take that first step and we want to communicate. So as a tactical approach, you want to begin to think through this is that how we communicate, whether it's a communication plan, it's a risk management plan, how we engage in meetings, is that communication touches all parts of these steps in positive project leadership. So taking a look at how we're communicating. Again, think about this. Trust elicits trust. That's a hard one for there. Trust elicits trust. How can I trust you if you won't do something that I expect you to do? Well, again, if you give trust and expect trust, in many cases, if I provide trust, I'm not saying that without validating, is that trust will help to elicit trust. If I make a mistake, but I've trusted you to do that, in many cases, the solution may not have been exactly the same as what we were thinking about, but it may meet that overall goal. And again, loyalty inspires loyalty. One of the fastest ways to make organizational change and to create camaraderie is that people are galvanized around a purpose. They trust each other to cover the parts that they have. And certainly, loyalty will inspire loyalty, meaning that if I have your back, I know you have my back. And sometimes things will happen, but the idea is that overall, we're trying to ensure that we are loyal to accomplishing the goals and objectives, and we're not just about climbing all over people to get there. Again, fear and transparency. Let's just talk about that for a moment. The idea in an organization, if you have what I call a spirit of fear, it makes it almost impossible to creatively think and solve problems. And again, that term of fear of transparency in an organization is that in many cases, maybe you've experienced this, where we want to create a project schedule. We're going to sit down and get an estimate from a technical team. they're afraid to give you the actual number of hours. In fact, many cases, they might even tell you the truth when they know it's 6 months, when they tell you it's a month to get something done. And the reason why is that there is a bit of fear of maybe that's actually what's going to happen. So accountability and transparency is a two-way street. In terms of creating transparency of what the problem is or how long something will take, allows a good leader to be able to say, you know what, let me represent you and make sure that people really do understand. That representation and transparency and fear suddenly says, hey, I'm not just trying to hold you accountable to do something that's impossible with a date or a timeline, is that I trust you to give me an accurate feedback, and I will go and represent to the best of my ability the problems or issues that are there so we can solve them together. And again, we're cultivating openness and trust. Now again, I go back to that trust, but verify. It's important to have validation in there, but the idea is that we want to elicit trust with our teams and let them actually get the work done. It doesn't mean micromanaging, and I know that sometimes is hard, but again, it's got to start somewhere with that process. Now, tactically, how do we start making this happen? So let's think about some tactical actions that you could do today to help you begin to build PPL. First of all, one of the things I tell people is that, script what you want to have happen. Right? If you write it down, you create an outline, you create a plan, in many cases your plans certainly can change, but the fact that you've gone through that planning exercise is what's producing value. So script and define what type of communication and results that you want to achieve. Hey, listen, when I engage on this project, I have a communication plan. This is my inbound communication. This is my outbound communication. This is what you can count on me to communicate with you about, or maybe to not communicate with you about. Sometimes I can over-communicate. But the idea is we're talking about how we want to engage, interact with our teams, both upward and downward. Again, you want to take some of these concepts, and if you have a core team, especially as a leadership, the idea is to get buy-in that says, this is what I want to do. I'd like to get some buy-in from the core team that this is something that we want to accomplish. And so the minute you have people beginning to engage with you, getting buy-in, you're seeking advice, is that people love to give you advice. In fact, many cases, they love to give you unsolicited advice. We're not talking about unsolicited advice, and that's where number 3 comes into place, is that as we begin to create tactical steps to help you create PPL, is that you do want to create a core team, an accountability structure that says, you know what, I really get cranky in the morning until I've had my coffee. Would you do me a favor? If I've got a really bad approach to doing something here, I'm going to give you a safety word that you're going to just say that will tell me, hey, listen, I really need to tone it down. And again, if we establish ground rules of communication, you begin to say, look, I want to make sure that people are involved in providing me feedback, or I'm going to elicit feedback, but that doesn't mean in every area of my life, right, or every part of the project. And so getting these ground rules kind of out on the table are going to help you begin to create in small steps and what we call small doses a good process for fostering PPL. Again, you're going to review the communication plan, you'll engage your core team or people that are around you, and then begin to create a process and apply this. Don't boil the ocean. Don't roll in with a silver bullet and say, here, we're going to eat the elephant in one bite. I recommend really starting in small places. Again, remember, this effect is not just about changing people around you. It's about you changing yourself and how you approach things. So again, be prepared. If you invite feedback, you're going to get feedback, and you may not like the feedback itself. So the idea is it's not just the fact that you're in fostering that culture of communication and eliciting feedback and giving feedback, but you want to not react. Remember, the idea is the first time, and this is so delicate, the first time you engage in terms of eliciting feedback and somebody comes in to say, you know what, Tim, you didn't part your hair correctly, or I just can't stand that beard that you have. Okay, tell me more, right? You're eliciting feedback, but your reaction will set the stage whether you will continue to elicit good information and good feedback from your team. The fastest way to shut this down is to react to that feedback. Again, you don't have to do it, but it's certainly the process of eliciting a requirement, getting a solution, and certainly focusing on that together. All right, part of that also is apply it, right? So you're going to hear feedback, you're going to certainly be looking at it, and you want to start applying the changes. And you certainly want to own the results. And what's pretty powerful around this in terms of tactability of actually making this happen is that sometimes your failures are as powerful as your successes. In fact, in some cases, a failure could be even more powerful than many successes. To give you an example of this is that sometimes people make mistakes. In fact, we had here at AdvisorCon many years ago, we had a person in an operational role, and they made a fairly costly mistake for the company. They were worried that they were going to get fired. And I said to them, I said, you know, I'm not going to fire you. What you're going to do is you're going to earn back that mistake 5 times over by making sure this never happens again in our organization. And so they took this learning experience, which was actually pretty costly, and basically infused a process and approach that made sure it never happened again. And so instead of just firing for somebody and then that tribal knowledge walk out the door, leverage your failures. But again, own the results. Successes, failures, they're both wonderful things. And again, rinse and repeat some of these steps to help you kind of grow that. Now again, core change, looking at you or you personally, is important. Again, in thinking through this, we talk about having a mindset of we, not me. You approaching me, not we, or we, excuse me, we, not me, is important, right? The idea is that we're going to solve this together. We want to lead from the front, or if possible, set the example. If you elicit trust, meaning that you're building that trust and I give it first, you will see and reap the trust back. Again, we talk about loyalty begets loyalty. So lead from the front. Treat people with respect. Just common sense, people here. If you talk about yelling or screaming or getting upset at people or berating them in front of others, it's hard. I use the term about validate and affirm your team members, but more importantly is to praise in public, criticize in private. Sometimes that feedback process is not something meant to be public. You may still publicly pronounce, here's some of the problems and how we're going to solve them, or, you know, I really am terrible at 3 a.m. in the morning. Please don't email me because I might send something completely incoherent. But the idea is that you want to validate the people who are doing the work. You want to elicit continued feedback and process improvement and trust, and certainly create that environment of grace. Validate the team members you're working with. Thank them. And certainly the idea is praise in public, and if there's things that need to be addressed, criticize in private. Again, take some of that information and transfer the vision. If you're in a leadership role, telling people what to do is okay, but in many cases, they may have more creative, better, and faster solutions. So transferring that vision back to them is helpful. So setting the stage, this is what we want to accomplish. How are we going to get there? These may be my ideas, but what do you think? Begins to create, again, that environment of the we, not me. And again, being transparent and accountable. If you're leading from the front and you make mistakes, or you have resources that are engaged and you've created a communication structure that says this is what I'm looking for, here's how I'd like to get that back to me, is that you do have accountability and people know that you're going to be measuring that, but how you measure and how you evaluate and how you adapt and adjust is just as important as just surfacing that information. Again, you want to have a mindset of working to a solution. Again, this isn't about blame. Fastest way to alienate people is to start blaming them for them. Again, that's not being accountable. It's not necessarily even being transparent. But the idea is that you want to have a mindset of we're all going to wrestle with problems. We need to focus on how we solve them. And then, yep, that's a problem. I use a phrase sometimes, it's not good data, it's not bad data, it's just data. And what we need to do with that data is make sure that we're engaged in solving what the problem might be to a good and healthy solution. Again, back to the beginning. Have a mindset that you are in a continuous process improvement, right? We think about Kaizen. You're never stopping learning. Regardless whether you're the CEO of the company or it's your first day on the job, you're going to be in a learning mode, and you'll be amazed at what you pick up from those around you. So again, from today's summary, again, remember leadership and positive product leadership, it's a journey. It's a mindset. We want to apply leadership to you first. Don't go around and make other people just have to capitulate or follow along with an example, but lead from the front. Affirm and validate your people and create that environment of grace that allows people to solve problems, surface issues, and not be living in fear of possibly having retribution or having a negative outcome. Again, we want to build that influence as a leader through trust. And the idea is that solutions are important, not blaming for not getting things done. So I want you to take a moment, not necessarily today, but if you want to reflect on some of this, is how are the things that I've talked about today, how would they benefit you? Basically, how would those actually help you? What would you like to see in your organization or where you're working? And again, if you think about the great benefits around implementing this type of an approach to solving problems and growing and delivering solutions, is that how are you going to apply that in your home life, your work life, your personal life? To that end, while I may be smart, I may not be the smartest person on the planet, and you want to draw upon good resources. So hopefully today has been helpful for you. I definitely want to let you know there are some great sites out there. There are great links. In fact, at the beginning, I talked about great books. Again, be in that learning mindset. It's amazing the little nuggets, gems, and wisdoms that you can pick up from leveraging different approaches. So I put on the screen here some different links, some different white papers and books that are out there. I encourage you to just tackle this and apply this, in how you implement. So whether you're doing a PMO or whether you're setting strategic vision and change, you're deploying Project Server, all of these things are initiatives, and it's how we go about doing that that makes and separates you as a leader. So as a guest lecturer and speaker, in many cases I encourage people to reach out to me anytime. Sometimes people love the tools and technology templates that we cover, and demonstrations are always helpful, and so I really encourage you to interact with us. I'm going to transition this back to Anna, who's going to kind of wrap this up today, but I thank you for coming. This is one of the fun parts of my job, is really stepping back and saying it's not about just a single technology implementation or running a project better. It's really how do you do organizational change, and starting with you and things that you can reap benefits from. So Anna, let me hand it back to you, and thank you for your time today.
Great. Thank you, Tim. This was definitely an inspiring time together with some great reminders and also new insights on the impact we can all have with our teams and our coworkers. Hopefully, this time was of great use to you guys. As some of you may have already noticed, this is a recorded session. We're doing this for you. So just in case you happen to miss a slide or you had to take a quick step away, or you'd like to pass this on to another coworker, we want to make this readily available. I'm going to be uploading this to our YouTube channel, and you will probably want to check that out anyways, as it has all of our other previous sessions uploaded for the very same purpose. So keep your eyes peeled for that. By Friday, it will be up there. If in case you are interested in any demos or free trials of some of the project management technology we support here at Advisicon, we'd also love to do that for you. So please feel free to reach out. As I mentioned at the beginning of our time together, this session is part of a weekly series we call Webinar Wednesdays. And next week's topic, we're shifting more over to the technology side, as we are going to walk through how to automate your project intake process with Visio and SharePoint workflows. It's a half-hour specific targeted session, so we just encourage you to attend, and hopefully that insight will be really helpful. Also, the session is qualified for a free PDU. The only thing I need you to do is fill out the short survey that's going to auto-populate as soon as we end this session. As soon as I get your responses, you're going to be seeing an email from me, and it'll contain the PDU access information. If you have any questions or issues, feel free to reach out. Again, that survey is how we guide and shape each week's topics. So please feel free to give us your input and ideas for topics we can cover that's going to help you in your daily environment. Okay, with that, on behalf of Tim, myself, and the team here at Advisicon, we want to thank you for spending an hour out of your day with us today. Thank you so much. We wish you the best throughout the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.